Hi, I'm Michael Polozola with the LSU AgCenter, and today I want to visit with you about pecans, in particular collecting scion wood for pecan grafting. Now, the most important thing for collecting pecan scion wood is getting good juvenile growth. And the only way you can really get that consistently, if you want to graft a lot of trees year to year, is to prune trees back and keep them small. You can see where this tree was pruned back in preparation for it to become a scion wood tree, so that it would put out more of these horizontal style branches that you could collect scion wood from. Now, this encourages a lot of good juvenile growth. They're fertilized fairly heavily to the point where this whole limb here is even first year growth, just about. Although we can definitely confirm from up this way, spot up, that it is. So if you're fertilizing heavily, and like this one in particular, pretty much all first year growth. It even grew so much that you can see that this was its first growth and this was its second growth. Now, a lot of times when you're going to a tree that hasn't been trained for this, you're going to want to look for the tips where you can see where it last hardened off. That might be what you're doing. But this type of growth here is going to be tricky to find a graft for. You might be stuck doing whip and tongue. So, as far as considering size, this is probably the size of a small pencil, about 1/4 of an inch. These type of tools are very useful for being able to go out quickly. They're a bit difficult to find. So 1/4 of an inch is a little bit too small. You can do some grafting, but what the issue gets to be, you don't have a lot to work with here. You may have adequate buds, but these are just not going to have the carbohydrate reserves you want for a successful graft. So it may start a little bit and then peter out. Really, for a whip and tongue grafting, you're probably, the smallest you're going to want to play around with is 5/16, which is about the top size of this. And when you're getting 5/16 wood, it's really so you can graft it on things that are about 3/8 an inch size. Those fit together fairly well. And that's the small, well, around that size, I'm probably going to want to whip and tongue, or even just whip graft if that's what you're more comfortable with. And for 4-flap grafting is pieces above that 9/16 up to almost an inch, if you can find that. Yeah. So that's the different sizes you're going to find. So really, this piece I would keep mainly. You could use the top part of it for whip and tongue grafting, and then the bottom you're getting more for 4-flap, 3-flap grafting. You're going to want to make certain you have good buds there, so the different ones respond better. And what I like about this one, I know for a fact this one was all this year's growth, and you can see where all of a sudden this was its first flush and this was the second flush. But you can tell by the texture of this that it is all this year's growth. This is going to be much easier to cut. When you start getting into older scion wood, collecting from trees that are from growth that's not necessarily as juvenile, if you have an older tree and you're having to collect scion wood for the right size that might even be from 2 growing seasons ago, you're going to find that wood to be much more dense. It's going to be harder to work with, and your graft rate is going to be lower because it's just not in that juvenile state that'll heal better. So this, you're going to want to also make certain that the trees you're harvesting from, you know exactly what cultivar. So you're going to want to have established trees. Like this is Elliott, the variety that's most in demand in the state right now. So this particular nursery has about 100 Elliott trees planted just to produce scion wood. But that's them doing it at a commercial scale. If you're going to do a handful of trees every year, or just do it on the side, you may be able to just have one tree that you have pruned back and can collect plenty of scion wood from. If you have a larger tree that you want to get a start of, it's a seedling that you found and you think is good, you can even just prune back a few branches to encourage more juvenile growth to come in that localized location. And if you're absolutely desperate, you can use older wood. Just know you're going to have a lower success rate, and you're going to have a hard time finding the size you want to graft with. Just graft more trees because of that lower percentage to account for that. And that's the other thing you're going to have to consider. To compensate for that, you're going to want to have really vigorous, high quality rootstock you're grafting on, and that can help compensate for a poor quality scion. But ideally, to get the best quality graft afterwards, you're going to want very vigorous scion wood that you've collected in combination with a vigorous rootstock. one thing I want to visit with you about is being some signs to be able to tell that last year's growth versus previous season's growth. And probably one of the main things to look for is lichen. Now, it is possible that in the right situation you can get some lichen formation on that year's vigorous growth, but this is obviously last year, if not 2 years ago, growth, because it's our trunk of the tree and you can see it's having lichen. And if you have a lot of lichen formation on the branch you're looking at, considering collecting for scion wood, I would really consider it. That's a sign that it's not growing very quickly, because it's not growing fast enough to slough this off. So be very cautious when you're collecting scion wood. Another thing would be algae growth, which we can see on some of this. I might avoid some of that because that tells me that's growing a bit slower. So look on ones that are, you can tell the texture and it looks like it's been growing. You can even see some of the lenticels and good growth, and that's what I would focus on for being able to graft.